Hi guys, this video is for Bill, Lauren, Marilyn, Mark, people that I've told about what I'm doing in the shop, but they might not really get it. This is where I used to make signs, of course. There's the cruise ship slot machine and a arcade game that the grandkids or other visitors love having. This is where I used to make signs all the time. Now it's more of a hobby shop. When I mention to people that I'm doing an electric bike, actually a number of them, I know it sounds confusing because they often wonder why is it taking so long. Well, those, for example, are a bunch of old laptop batteries. I bought them on eBay. They're battery packs that were no longer good for computers, but yet when you break them open, 85% of the batteries are actually still perfectly good. So I'm putting them together into battery packs that I can use on electric bicycles. That's a welder that you can weld these battery packs together with much better than soldering. I do a lot of soldering because of electronics of all types that I work on, and because of that, solder has lead. I have to have an extractor that extracts the fumes as I'm soldering so I don't get bothered by perhaps lead poisoning. I have everything nicely marked for a couple reasons. Number one, that way I can just tell where they are, but also because my eyesight is not as good and it helps me to be able to see at a quick glance where things are. Now with the electric bikes, in addition to the battery packs, you have to assemble the bikes. But here in Colorado, we have Texas sandburrs, and they puncture the tires continuously. So before I do anything, I have to take the old tubes out, put super thick tubes in, and tire liners so the sandburrs don't puncture the tires continuously. Now this bicycle looking device is designed to be pulled behind mom and dad's bike with a child on it. There's the seat post and the handlebar post, but instead of having it that way, I'm going to replace what used to be the back tire, and I took the crank and the chain and stuff off, and I'm replacing the back tire with a bicycle motor that will allow you to push a bicycle by attaching it to a regular bike right there. What that does is go over the back wheel and attach to the seat post, so it will actually be a frame that has an electric motor and a battery pack on it that will push any bicycle you attach it to. This is a folding bicycle that will have a motor wheel on the front. It too will need a battery pack and a controller. It will have a normal back wheel that you see right there, but the front wheel will be the electric motor that is actually over there. This is a mountain bike, a brand new one, 27.5 inch. It too will have an electric motor, but the motor will be attached to the back wheel, which will remain the normal back wheel. Now if you look over there, you see the 3D printer that I use most of the time. 3D printing is something I really enjoy doing, but I may spend 3 or 4 hours designing a piece and then 30 hours printing it. And it may mess up at part way, so it can be a very time-consuming process. I have another 3D printer there and there. That one used to work, but part broke, and again, this stuff is imported from China, and you might have to wait months and months for a part. I think I have the correct part, but I haven't had the time yet to replace it. That over there is going to be another 3D printer that I'll be assembling eventually. This is a Mario sign that I had it working a couple years ago. When the kids walk in front of it, That is a water valve that actually is controlled with a solenoid and an electric eye that sees the kids coming in front of it and then sprays them. Unfortunately, Lincoln, as a 4-year-old, immediately walked behind it and went right to the dangerous electrical parts, so I haven't used it since, till I figure out how to encompass all that. Now, when I sit down in the shop, I have no way of knowing what's going on upstairs, and my hearing is getting worse over the years, so I have cameras. I have 4 video cameras outside being shown on this monitor, and I also have an alarm that tells me when people are on the front porch. When I had the sign company, it was very important to be able to know when someone was making a delivery so I can sign for it and receive it. Now it's all Amazon packages. That's the vinyl cutter that made a lot of signs for me. That's the big printer. The big printer and the cutter still work fine, but they do need sold. That's something I just can't afford to keep around for the few signs that I make occasionally for our own use. There's a tremendous number of materials that I used to use all the time, and those too need to be sold. This is a rack that used to store sign equipment and sign supplies, but now it's where I keep the hobbies. The RC airplanes, the electric bike frames were up there before I took them down. So many of these parts have to be stored, though, because you just can't get them just anywhere. You have to order them online, and sometimes they take as much as a month and a half to get here, or even longer, and then you got to store them and keep them organized until you actually can use them. Eventually, a lot of these boxes will be empty when the electric bikes are actually working. When you're replacing a back wheel of a bike with an electric motor wheel, you end up with extra parts, such as that. There's some very specialized things like micro switches and various power supplies that you used to be able to get some of it at Radio Shack, but not everything. Again, I have to keep a tremendous inventory of that stuff on hand just for when I need them. Over there are items for solar systems, including an inverter to convert the solar energy to AC power. That is something I'm working on for the future. I'm going to have 4 panels above the garage, and those will eventually send the power to these lesser quality batteries that I'm not using on the bicycles, but I will be using to store the solar power that's converted to electricity, so we can have it for when the power goes out, which, believe it or not, happens quite a bit in our area. On top of the printer, I have a whole bunch of airplanes that I bought for Lincoln. Lincoln calls it his Air Force, and he loves to come down and he thinks he's stealing Pappy's airplanes, but in reality, he's just taking the airplanes that I bought for him and running away with them. He calls this shop the secret laboratory. He says we can make anything in the secret laboratory, so he loves coming down here. He says that this place is wonderful because you can be very creative, and he's right. We also have 2 regular bicycles out in the garage that I'm going to have motors on, and it seems like I have an excessive amount of bikes, which I do. Kind of happened in a haphazard way, but eventually I think we'll be using all of them, or maybe Vicky's children or Val and Eli might have one eventually. Anyway, guys, that's an update on what I've been doing in the shop, and what it used to be the sign shop is now a bunch of hobbies, and as long as my eyesight holds out, I'll be making this kind of stuff.